So just a little bit of a review, right? If data is given to you individually, you just type that into L1, and to figure out the mean and standard deviation, right, you just do one of those. It's a good reminder, so you tell yourself how to do it. So the mean in this case is 138.14. Points or units. If you don't have units, it's fine, because, or does it say what it means? No. Okay, here the bowling score, so it should have something attached to it. Points. Yeah. So units are needed, and the standard deviation is going to be 10.95 points. Okay. So we'll give you 2 marks for this. 1 and 1. If units are missing, take off half. Okay. Just going to focus here a little bit. There we go. So we'll leave this blank for now. To be continued. Let's go to the second one. The results of a stats test using graphing calculator, fill in the blanks below. So they want the mean, standard deviation, class size. Once you've got this, you have to find the midpoints. So that will be worth a full mark for you to actually show me the midpoints, right? And the way you do that is you add the 2 limits and divide it by 2. But you got to make sure you do that either using brackets or in steps, where you go add, right, which is 35 divided by 2 is 17.5. This is 32.5, 47.5, 62.5, 77.5, and 92.5. So if you have even one of them wrong today, we'll go -1, because I feel like that should be pretty straightforward. So 1 mark there. And then in this case, we will say this is going to L1, this is going to L2, right? So we go L1, L2. So this would technically be one variable stats, L1, comma L2, like this. And so the mean, if you did this right, is 65.07%. The standard deviation is 16.62%. And class size is technically N, which is 35, what would that be? Students or tests, right? Students. You could say test scores or tests or anything like that. I would accept that because it would mean about the same thing. Okay. So I would give you in total here 2 marks in total. So if you got the mean wrong because you forgot the L2, I would go -1, right? And this is half and half, obviously, and we would base it on what you put in. So if you didn't put in L2, you will just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. N will be equal to 6. And that should be a red flag, right? You're not just using 6 values, you're using, right, this many values. So N is equal to 35 here, right? Frequency. So we are at, what is it, 2 and 3, that's 5. So we're out of 5. Okay, at the top. Watch this though. We're going to say out of 5. And then I'm going to go plus out of 2, which will happen a little later. So you'll have a mark out of 7. So give yourself a mark out of 5 right now. You will keep this AC, and after my short lesson, you're going to try to do the second part here, which will be happening in this blank space here. And it'll be open book. So if you're awake today, you're okay. You're going to be fine. This is actually, if you take stats in university, they'll make you do this by hand. Standard deviation. You don't get to bring in your fancy graphing calculator for that. So we're going to attempt to find a 10.95 by hand, right? That's what you're going to do later on. So put this aside for a bit. and grab your booklets. Grab your booklets, and we're going to go back in time a bit. We're going to go to page 19. Page 19 looks like this. Some of you already know how to do this because you scan the QR code, which is awesome. That's why I put it there. Okay, so when you did the homework way back when, I asked you to determine the mean and the standard deviation for class A and class B. Okay, so we went ahead and did that. So let's write this down. Class A, if you don't have this, of course, the mean is 78%, and the standard deviation is 14.27%. For class B, the mean was 78.4%, and the standard deviation is 3.61%. Which class do you think that, as a teacher, which class would you say, yeah, this class did pretty good overall? Because the averages are about the same, right? I as a teacher would like this, right? More consistent, clustered around mean, right? Lower standard deviation, right? So lower standard deviation means all of these things. Think about it this way: your bars are way smaller, right? If you were to graph the normal curve, your spacing would be a lot smaller. This class, you would space it out way more, right? So the standard deviation kind of tells you how close together or spaced out things are. Now we're going to figure out our standard deviation by hand. Okay, I'm going to do this by hand. And this is the formula for standard deviation by hand. Okay, standard deviation, write this one down, is this the square root. So it's a big square root like this of the sum of the average minus the actual individual scores divided by n. Oh, and I'm almost forgetting something here. Don't forget this is squared. That is the formula for standard deviation. I would have this highlighted and added to your formula sheet because I usually ask at least once on a test. I don't make the data sets too big, but for you to do this by hand. Standard deviation. Box this in. So we're going to do class A first. Class A. So I'm going to focus, you know what I focus on first is doing this part right here. Okay, and then I plug it into back into this formula, and then we calculate the rest. So the sum of the mean minus every single value squared looks like this. You have to be conservative with your spacing, but I go like this. You take the mean, which is 78 for class A, minus the first test score is 94. So you go 94. You square that. Then you're going to add. You use the mean again. Okay. Wait a minute. Do I have it the other way in your... Somewhere you did this. 1 second. Okay. So all you need to do is take the bar away from this one. And that's going to be hard if it's highlighted, right? So just make the X a little bigger and put the bar on top of this. The reason it doesn't matter is because you end up squaring that difference. So it's always going to be positive no matter what. But I still want to be consistent. So officially, this is how you do it. I stand corrected here. It's x minus x bar. That's how I have it. If you scan the QR code, that's how I have it in there. Okay. So we're going to change this. I really don't like when this happens, but I'm human after all. Okay. Right. So you got to take the first score. Like x stands for the score, so 94 minus 78. And you take the next score, which is 56. You subtract that from the average. You square it. Then you got to add the next score, which is 89 minus 78. You square that. We're going to continue with that. Plus 89 minus 70. No, I did that already. 67 minus 78 squared. Then it's 84 minus 78 squared. So you do that over and over until you're done with all your data sets, but you always subtract the mean from it because we're trying to find the average distance, right? So if you think about 94 minus 78, you're finding how far away are you from the mean, and then you square that. So we're going to do that. So this is my next line here. Just to show that it's a continuation of that. So I will probably do this a little faster. So watch this. I take my calculator. I go 94 minus 78. Okay. That's 16. Then I take 16 and I square it. So that's 256. Plus, I have to be careful on this one. I'm going to use brackets just to make sure. 56 minus 78, because that's going to be a negative value. And then you square that whole thing. Okay, just use brackets and you'll be safe. That's 484. Plus the next one, 89. I use brackets again. 89 minus 78, you square that, you get 121. And if you're careful, everything is going to be on your screen. And this could be decimals, so be careful with that. It's not always going to be a whole number. So 121 is what we got between these two. Then continued. 67 minus 78, I have to do that in brackets. It's safest to do it in brackets because if you get a negative, you need to square the negative as well. Okay, so that's 121 again. And then I have to do this last one here. 84 minus 78, square that. That's 36. And so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 numbers. I'm going to add this all up now because that's what the sum is telling you, to add it all up. Add up all your answers here, and you get 1,018 if you do that. And this is where you finish your work. I'm going to go back to this one here. I'm going to say, okay, now I'm going to plug in this value that I've just determined, right? 1,018 takes up this space up here, because that's essentially what you got when you computed that. You divide it by the number of scores. In this case, we have 5 test scores. And that's going to be your answer. So to be safe, I'm going to go second x2, right? Just call the root. I'm going to go bracket 1,018 divided by 5, close the bracket. And that's 1427 if you round it. 1427. And if you think about it, let's compare it to what we should have gotten. Look it up here, right? That's what the calculator gave us. So you can always double check to make sure you did it right. Okay? And you're like, what about class B? You can try class B underneath. You can try this. You can use this space absolutely, because which class had more consistent marks? I already explained that here. This one is more consistent because it has a lower standard deviation, right? I already answered that. So you can just use that space, and you're supposed to get 3.61. Okay, you're supposed to get 3.61. So um, your task is going to be on that AC that I just gave you to do the same thing um, for that AC. Okay, but I'm going to send that home with you. So I'm just going to trust you. You're not going to change the mark out of 5. You're going to come back tomorrow, and I will look at it myself and give you a score out of 2 for doing this step right here. Okay. If you need to see how I did class B, right? So class B, you could do underneath. If you're like, you know what, I need one more go at it, just scan this QR code, and it takes you to the video where I go through both actually. So if you need a refresher, just scan QR code, right? Scan QR or do it yourself. Okay. So that's going to be part of your homework. It shouldn't take you that long, but I need you to know how to do this. And if you need more practice, go back to anything, even on page 20 here. Let's go to page 20. If you want to practice with these numbers, because you technically already calculated the mean and the standard deviation for this. You need the mean before you start doing the standard deviation by hand. And see if you come up with the same answer that you would have using your calculator, using one variable stats. Okay, so you can practice on any question either prior to this or moving forward. Okay, that's that.